everyone, my name is Noah Song. Welcome to PSCORE's Group 3 2020 workshop. Despite the two summits in 2018 and 2019, the South, the North, and all their parties, well, their future is still uncertain. In January 2018, Kim Jong-un said that he was open for dialogue, and President Trump became the first sitting president to meet a North Korean leader and even signed the complete denuclearization of the peninsula, however, with no further progress. And since then, the DPRK has continued its missile testings and recently even blew up the liaison office in Kaesong. The lack of progress, despite the many communications attempts, make us believe that the South, the North, have diverging thoughts regarding the future of the peninsula. For more fruitful communication to emerge, it is thus essential to have a thorough understanding of the similarities and disparities of the two countries, which launches the topic of the day: what are the main similarities and differences between the North and the South and their people? Today's discussion aims at garnering multidimensional perspectives from people from all around the world. Let us now share our ideas on what are the similarities and differences and how the differences could be narrowed down to allow a smoother reunification.
이름은 고요. 그리고 지금 현재 대학교 재학 중입니다. 학과는 정치외교학과입니다. 그리고 살던 곳은 평양에서 태어났고, 그리고 어릴 때 한 11살 때까지 살고, 오기 전에 한 해산에서 한 2년 정도 살다가 온 것 같습니다.
Hi, I'm from Australia and I'm really passionate about human rights and studied international relations at university.
My name is I am 24 years old, but Korean age might be 26 years old. I was born in North Korea and raised in South Korea since 2006. I live more in South Korea than North Korea.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Rome and my major is Korean studies. I've been in South Korea for 1 year in a language program, and during that time I done an internship with North Korean defectors for the first time, and that what really got me interested in North Korea.
So my name is Stina Sverger. I'm 21, I'm from Denmark. I'm a marketing management major, currently an intern at PSCORE.
My name is Otto. I am 21 years old and I'm from Croatia. I'm thinking about the reunification because when the reunification day eventually does come, I think that whether the people want it or not is gonna be what makes or breaks the whole thing.
북한 음식은 좀 더 전통에 가까운 음식인 것 같고, 그리고 한국의 음식은 좀 세계적으로 많이 믹스되면서 좀 더 서양에 좀 가까운 그런 음식인 것 같습니다.
As you may know, South Korea has got influenced by Western culture for a long time. So even in terms of food, like pizza, chicken, and hamburger, such these foods comes from Western world and got settled down in South Korea. Otherwise, in North Korea, they usually tend to eat traditional food like rice and soup is basically what they eat for daily life.
I'm from Australia and we have quite a few connections with Asia, whether it's through treaties or trade. So North and South Korea do appear on the news quite a lot. I would say that the perception of North Korea is largely surrounding their politics, and it is largely focused on Kim Jong-un. And so, for example, I'd say the largest news stories that we often hear would be surrounding their nuclear weapons capabilities, and also any kind of large political events such as the Trump visit to North Korea. I would say that because we are allies with the USA and Japan, for example, there is likely a lot of subjectivity regarding how the news is presented. And I would also say that the focus is very much on Kim Jong-un specifically and the regime in general, instead of, for example, the people in North Korea. So the human rights aspect is reported on, but not exactly the most attention-grabbing headlines on, for example, the people's experiences or famine or poverty or other things that are going on in North Korea.
I'm from Croatia, and that's literally the other side of the world. Our media and our education isn't as focused on Asia, especially like the whole Korea part. So what I know, at least, is what I've been taught in my primary and high school, which was mostly like, yeah, those parts of the world exist, and everybody there like works a lot and just studies a lot, and that's pretty much it.
I agree with this topic that Confucianism strongly influenced both North and South Korea. Also, one of the big countries that got influenced by Confucianism. Like the main theory in Confucianism is that obeying to their kings or their rulers and respecting to elders. These were big factors in Confucianism. Both North and South Korean, just ordinary people, tend to, think on when they think about something based on Confucian ideology. So what I think is Confucianism is really influenced in the entire Korea. Yeah.
제 생각에 가치관이라고 하면 뭐 여러 가지 분야가 있겠지만 뭐 부모를 존경하고 이런 유교적인 전통에서는 가치가 비슷한데 뭐 정치적으로나 이런 문제에서는 좀 다르다고 봅니다.
A language barrier is not a big problem. I'm sure this is not a big problem. If unified together and live together within a few years, just even ordinary people got to know what the different language is. In my experience, like I was quite young boy when I first settled down in South Korea, like 10, 11 years old. So within 1 year, I knew all the languages existing in South Korea. If we have the willingness to overcome the language differences, we can do it.
북한도 약간 외래어를 많이 쓰는데 그래서 뭐 탱크라든가 뭐 카메라, 라디오 약간 이런 부분은 같다고 생각하고 그리고 외래어적인 부분에서 통일되는데 문제가 되지는 않는다고 생각합니다. 왜냐면 사람이 적응을 잘해가지고 금방 통일되면 그런 부분도 쉽게 해소된다고 저는 생각합니다.
I believe that if North Korea doesn't adapt more to English words, the language gap will only increase, and this could be problematic for reunification between South Korea and North Korea. However, if the goal is for North Korea to be an independent sovereign state, I don't believe that it is necessarily as important for them to adapt the English words.
The constitution in North Korea, the communism is all written and all deleted. The communism country usually has only one ruler who entirely controls the entire people. That's why we call them as dictator or dictatorship. As a democratic country, but we didn't consider them as democratic country. This is a big difference existed in North and South Korea, and the rest of the world.
저 개인적으로는 북한 분들한테 뭐 사회주의라고 한다면 좀 더 민족주의에 좀 더 가깝고, 그리고 대한민국은 좀 더 글로벌하게 포용적인 약간 그런 거에 더 가까워서 북한 분들은 앞으로 통일되면 많이 변하겠지만 현재는 좀 더 약간 민족주의나 혹은 국가 약간 이런 데 좀 더 기울어 있다고 저 개인적으로 생각합니다.
It affects, I mean, everything. Literally, the way of life is completely different, even though it's pretty much the exact same country, had the exact same history up until like 70 years ago. So those two regimes are very, very different, and I think those kind of merging those two together or finding a middle ground is going to be the biggest challenge when talking about reunification.
Interesting contrast to be made here, as North Korea has definitely really focused their ideology on the idea of community and collectivism that guides their principles as a nation. However, on an international level, because of their Juche ideology, they are then in fact very isolationist and individualist.
In North Korean propaganda, there's terms that 자력 경쟁, which means self-sufficient. However, I think North Korea also knows the fact that they should trade with other countries because some resources they don't have, so they need to import the resources they don't have from outside the world. Isolated. Yeah. Only way that they had to choose.
부모님 세대부터 약간 그 주체 사상이나 뭐 이런 거 했다고 뭐 그러는데 강해지고 약해지고는 정확히 그걸 이렇게 수치로 따지는 게 아니라서 저 개인적으로는 정확히 모르겠습니다.
I always believe that the political situation in the country is going to have an impact on the population's social life. As mentioned before, the political state in North Korea is very different from that of South Korea. And so I don't believe that they should eliminate both of them, as in they shouldn't eliminate communism or eliminate democracy, but they should find a middle ground where they can make it work if they are to reunify.
Came to my mind was the idea of China and the fact that they are a state that is socially communist but economically capitalist. So I wonder if it is possible for North Korea to take a step such as this and alleviate some of its economic burdens, which I believe are a really big issue within North Korea, by perhaps entering the world stage with international trade.
As somebody who grew up in a democracy, it would be like, yeah, just get rid of the whole communist thing, it's not really working. But the thing is, you can easily see how somebody from North Korea could be viewing it the same way. They would say, oh, just get rid of the whole capitalism thing, it's not very good. So I think that you need to find some common ground, even though there isn't a lot of it. You still have to find some similarities to bring the people together, because the worst thing that you could have happen is on the day of their reunification, if you have both the people of South and the North saying, yeah, those are different people, our cultures are different, we don't belong together, and then the whole thing falls through. Like, nobody wants that to happen, and yeah, you need to find some common grounds and work on them.
In my opinion, the communist ideology also has its good points. So I think we should mix communism and capitalism together. Like, we could get each other's good points and then look forward to a more socialist way of democracy. I think that could be a way.
The communism is perfect, but it's impossible. It's just utopia. The social welfare system in all countries will be similar with communism, right? That is what I think of. We even care of the elders and handicapped, even if they are sometimes have no abilities to to own those goods and lands being taken in South Korea.
정치적 격차를 줄이는 거는 아무래도 북한 분들도 공부를 어릴 때부터 대부분 그러니까 국가적으로 시켜가지고 그런 격차를 줄이는 부분에서는 아무래도 문화적으로 좀 많이 소통되거나 하면 빨리 줄일 것 같고 한 개 정권은 없어야 그래 좀 완전한 통일이 되지 않나 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다. 지금 현재에서 만약 북한 분들이 민주주의를 원한다면 다양한 선택권이 있겠지만 뭐 평화적으로 다 할 수도 있고 뭐 좀 가격하게 할 수도 있는데 이렇게 통일이 된다고 하면 그런 문제 없이 좀 편하게 독일처럼 그렇게 통일이 되고 그리고 민주주의를 이루지 않겠나 개인적으로 생각합니다.
If there is reunification, then obviously this would be a massive advantage because the arable land of the south would be able to supply food to the north, which from what I hear is a really big issue of lack of food. And then the industry in the north would hopefully be able to be developed like how South Korea was able to really develop its technology sectors with telecommunications and other just high-tech devices. They were really able to boost their economy. I hopefully believe that with the support of South Korea, the north would be able to rejuvenate its industries and perhaps just look into the realm of technology. And I believe that it would really be the responsibility of South Korea to ensure that that this was done in a fair exchange.
So a lot of people think that after reunification, since the north is going to be poor, a lot of people are going to immigrate to the south to work. But I think this is going to be right only for a few decades, like 10 or 20 years. And after that, since in the north has so much resources compared to the south, I think that the north has the potential to be richer than the south.
The North Korean people only being like the workers, like the manual labor, while the South Koreans will be like the CEOs and they take most of the money. And then like what the North Korean people have been taught in communism is that, well, all capitalists are pigs, they want to just take all the money. And they would kind of have that prejudice confirmed if that were to just happen.
So as mentioned before, I think accumulates down to the question of whether it's going to be a complete reunification or if North Korea and South Korea are going to be independent states and just enter into a type of partnership. South Korea does currently have the 12th largest economy in the world, and they've managed to do this through their exportation of technology and manufacturing of many car parts. I believe they'll be able to help North Korea. However, they shouldn't compromise their own economic growth to do so.
Many of South Korean people would be white collars because they are well educated compared to that of North Korea. But in North Korea, it's something that is not yet discovered.
북한도 약간 문맹률이 많이 낮고 그래가지고 사람들이 쉽게 뭐 경제적으로 같이 교류하거나 혹은 자본주의에서 약간 통용되는 경제 방식이라든가 이런 거 교육하면 빨리 쉽게 경제 통합 이루어지지 않을까 저는 개인적으로 생각하고 있고 북한도 뭐 지하자원이나 이런 거 많아가지고 그리고 사람들도 좀 뭐라 그래 젊은 세대가 많다 그래야 되나 아직까지 그런 부분에서 기술적으로나 이런 데 좀 도움이 되지 않을까 저는 생각하고 있습니다.
Then move to North Korea, we have to discover and advance and build all the things in North Korea. Ports, roads, buildings. Every infrastructure in North Korea is quite old-fashioned. So we need to renew or remake it. By the infrastructures in North Korea, we can find and create new jobs. So many workers usually move to North Korea, then get a job. Yeah, North Korea might operate to South Korea a big job field. If that happens, I would be really happy and pleasured. North Korea has many natural resources, but they can't use good skills from South Korea. So it might synergy effect.
An incredible amount of focus on new laws that would be created in order to protect and uphold the rights or the dignities of both North and South Koreans, but in this instance I believe special provisions would likely have to be made for North Koreans, as for example one of the largest issues would be the educational discrepancies.
Yeah, so I think that it should be viewed as a partnership and not necessarily as one country coming in to take over all of the decision making for the other country. Often when we discuss business, we discuss it in terms of partnerships when you're trying to work together between businesses, and I think we should view both the North and South like this, so that they could enter into some kind of partnership where both of them are held liable to their decisions but not necessarily hurt in any way.
So yes, I believe that it would be difficult for North Korea to develop as quickly as South Korea did, purely because a lot of that has to do with not fully luck, but it just has to do with the chances and the opportunities that a country can take at any given time, where they can fill a spot in world trade and boost their economy. So it's difficult for any country to follow in their footsteps. However, North Korea does seem to be paying special attention to technology, so I believe that this could be a realm that they could develop, and hopefully they would be able to ignite exports and imports into the country and out of the country that would help them boost their economy, if not at the exact same speed as South Korea, then at least to an extent where they were able to be stable.
공정한 모델을 만들려면 현재 뭐 북한이 어느 정도 좀 그러니까 GDP라든가 이런 면에서 지금 대한민국 한 3만 달러 조금 넘는데 15,000 정도 올라왔을 때 그 정도면 뭐 약간 사람들의 의식이나 이런 부분도 많이 약간 성숙되기 때문에 그러면 좀 약간 자유롭게 되지 않겠나 개인적으로 생각합니다. 현재는 너무 그 약간 발전을 못 해가지고 다른 부분에서 뭐 하면 빨리 일어설 수 있다고 저는 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다.
In order for it to develop, does need to have some trade with the outside world. If they're not willing to completely give up all of their communist ideologies, there could be trades, not necessarily through money or currency, but through goods and services, which would require it to open its borders to some extent in order to have exports and imports.
The economic growth might might face the limitation, but in capitalism there would be no limitation. So economically they might grow well.
개인적으로는 성공 못한다고 생각하고 있습니다. 이유는 아무래도 지금 전 세계적으로 뭐 그런 사회주의나 이런 게 없기 때문에, 그리고 뭐 북한에서 뭐 지하자원이 나오는 게 아니기 때문에 자본주의를 선택해야 좀 더 발전이 빠르지 않겠나 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다.
The big difference is North Korean soldiers' lifespan as soldiers as 10 years. Many North Korean soldiers hate and complaining about their situation as soldiers. North Korean soldiers don't have enough nutrition. Not all of soldiers are patriots. So even if the war broke out, the soldiers would not fight against its opponent. Military for 10 years does not make sense. They had to digest in their life because they were born in North Korea. That is all the fact that is they had to obey for.
Pretty much all major wars had propaganda where they try to demonize the other side. Some of the most notable examples were World War II, you know, how Germans portrayed the Soviets as the enemy and pigs and vice versa. And I know in the Vietnam War there was a lot of propaganda posters. And the reason you want to do that is because when you have a strong military, you don't want the people in the military thinking, oh, I'm gonna kill someone, and that's somebody who has a family and friends and hobbies and their whole life. Like if you get your soldiers to think like that, they're not gonna want to do it, right? They're just gonna say, why would I kill someone who's also a human being? So what they do is they create this distorted image of reality where they portray the enemy as like subhuman. Very often it's an animal like pig. I know I was using in World War II a lot, and I actually have some examples here. First one is from the UK, from the 1940s. It's called Freedom, and it portrays the Nazis as like this evil demonic being that's kind of taken over the city, and the UK fighter trying, you know, free it. Like it's playing the little guy. It's supposed to like evoke some patriotism and show that the enemy isn't really human, right? He's not a person, he's like this big force that's trying to kill you and your family. It's not a human. And I also have one from the occupation of Poland, also 1940. It's called Where's the Fifth Pig? As you can see, like I mentioned, pigs were often used. You have like 4 pigs, and it's sort of like a little puzzle. And when you put it together, you get the image of Hitler. So yeah, it's a very common tactic, and as I said, you do that to make killing a lot easier, unfortunately.
Because even if the young people going through military service believe that the service is not just a waste of time, but also potentially incredibly dangerous physically and mentally, it's not actually up to them whether or not mandatory service continues. It's the policymakers and the leaders who are the ones who require this service, and I believe that it's perpetuated that military service is an honor and a duty to your country that must be done.
Inclined to say no, actually, because I think for the most part wars are not fought by people who want to kill each other, but by governments who want more, I don't know, resources, more land, more something, it doesn't matter. And I think throughout most of history you had people who didn't really want to go to war. So, you know, you have the propaganda posters which kind of help, you know, oh, they're the enemy, they're trying to kill you, and just give you an exterior motive. Well, most of the time it was literally just about the land or something. It wasn't anything really, I would say, good for anyone. Yeah, even if the Korea is reunited, I'd say that you'd still probably have to go to the military because they would find a common enemy. In this case, I'd say it would be like something like China. And they'd say, oh, well, if the war happens, you know, we need a lot of soldiers, so you're gonna spend 2 years in military again. So unfortunately, I think that military service would stay.
Young men play on the battleground, fight for the old ones. Both North and South Korean soldiers don't want to serve in military. My colleague friends always complained us, oh, I don't want to go to military, even if it is only 1 year, 0.6 months, because they are students, they are trainees, they had to study, they had to find their jobs. Why we should serve in military for more than 1 year, in North Korea for more than 1 decade? So it's quite sad situation because Korea Peninsula is separated with 2 countries. This tragedy comes up from this separation that must be fixed.
힘들다고 생각하는데 왜냐면 뭐 우리 대한민국 주변의 나라들이 뭐 중국, 러시아, 일본, 미국 대부분 다 강대국이라서 군복무를 안 하고 이런 건 힘들지 않을까 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다.
But I think the most important part would be that it has to be taken very slowly, very carefully, and considered from both sides. So both of the governments need to work together to make it happen. Because, like I mentioned before, if you just kind of open up the borders and say, oh yeah, the people will get along, it's just gonna be horrible, right? You have people who, generations who grown up in the capitalism and generations in communism, and it's just people that have hatred for each other. And if you just do that, just open it up, from nothing it will be probably another war, and that's not really good for anyone.
I think that in order to narrow the difference between the North and the South, education is key in both countries, and I think it's really a broad topic. So in my opinion, whatever the measure is, whatever happens, I think the most important thing is to resolve things peacefully.
I remain hopeful that there is a chance that the economy, the political system, the education system could be combined in a way that upholds the human rights of all countries and respects their differences, and also acknowledges and celebrates their similarities, which hopefully can bring them together again.
I think it's important to understand that Korean reunification is definitely going to have a global interest. However, we must remember that both the South and the North will probably both be more than capable in having a peaceful reunification, because they both have the best understanding of each other's culture compared to other countries. So, of course, they should respect each other's similarities and differences, but I also think that we, myself being from Denmark, should not necessarily interfere as much into their reunification.
Respect the way, the path of what they do in North Korea. Also, North Korea, they had to respect the way, the life, the path of what South Korean people do in its society. Because we've been separated for 7 decades, which means we have different mind, different mindset, different thoughts, different backgrounds.
북한이 경제 발전도 좀 많이 하고, 그리고 물론 그런 민주주의가 되어야겠죠. 그리고 사람들의 의식도 많이 변하고, 한 시간이 좀 흐르면 편하게 통일이 되지 않을까 개인적으로 생각하고 있습니다.